As Ritesh said, India is the startup capital of the world. I would say, you go to San Francisco, you go to Europe, you don't find the energy which you find here. This is primarily because people in tier 2, tier 3 cities are all talking about startups. Every engineering college, every MBA college has an entrepreneurship cell. There would be at least 60 to 70 accelerators across the country who are breeding startups. So the energy, the aspiration to do well in the world is just infectious, and India is a place to be in.
That's an amazing insight that, this is not a top 6 cities or top 8 cities trend, but it's really reached Bharat, even in terms of entrepreneurship cells and starting up at the college level. But Upasana, you cannot talk about startups thriving without mentioning the initiatives from the government, be it the Jam Trinity, right, Jan Dhan Aadhaar, or more importantly, all the DPIs in place, from eKYC to UPI to all the building blocks. I mean, we've seen a significant leapfrog because of that. In fact, we had the global CEO of Visa yesterday, and he said he's asked his employees to take pictures of sound boxes in India so that, he can show it to his global teams on the kind of innovation that's happening in fintech. It's on a different plane altogether, the use cases and the innovations. Take us through the role that DPI has played, and what role will it continue to play? Because now we are seeing account aggregator, we are seeing OSEN, which is again going to play a huge role in credit. We are seeing ONDC, which is, an e-commerce challenger. What role is all of this going to play?
So firstly, thanks for having me here, Chandra. A pleasure to be here with all my very esteemed panelists. And, the question that you asked, I think the government in India has had a huge role to play. And within the government, I would say the central bank, the regulator, Reserve Bank of India, and all their different divisions, which have been at the forefront of this fintech innovation. And of course, that's how it, sparks. Has UPI been a game changer for India? Obviously it has. But even before UPI, has Aadhaar been a game changer for India? It has. And everything else that you mentioned, the fact that today you can buy real estate and everything is based on your Aadhaar and not necessarily based on your thumbprint or your signature. I think as a country, loans are being given, investments are being made completely digitally, right? Forget about the fact that we move money at the speed of a few milliseconds, which was not the case in the most developed markets. So absolutely, I mean, having been a participant of the fintech industry for the last 14 years, before the word fintech was coined is when we got started. And much like my co-panelists were saying, have done, answered all of that questions, that does India need digitization in payments and then other financial products? Or, convincing parents that, why is this mission so important? So I think what I would like to say is that today, while India has about 800 million internet users, from a fintech perspective, the transacting base is still around 400, 450 million. So from that perspective, it's still a very high growth opportunity, because in the next 5 to 7 years, this number will double to 800 million transacting users. And that is where all of these things come in, that the user will have an Aadhaar, do a KYC, and then will get access to all the financial products, whether in their personal capacity or for their small business. And, keeping in mind that India is such a fast-growing country from a GDP and economy perspective, I think that our sector is going to sort of be an evergreen sector from that perspective, because everything said and done, financial products even today are reaching only the top 150 million Indians. And from an enterprise perspective also, it's only reaching the large enterprises and the upper echelon of the SME base. So, there's a long way to go for the QRs and the sound boxes and the soundbox backed merchant loans that have still to reach, 50, 70 million merchants in India. And I say that all of the things that have happened via DPI with government and regulatory intervention have been extremely solid and positive in this making of this ecosystem. Right. And I see a lot more is going to happen in the future. And I'll go one step ahead and say that financial technology innovation in India is been so strong in the last 5 to 7 years. The first 10 years, the ecosystem was getting built. Last 5 to 7 years, we've seen business models being made out of that. And so it's been a, how to build a sustainable business on top of this fintech. So our tech stacks are so strong. not only will these homemade, made in India companies serve the Indian consumer and the Indian business merchant base, these technologies will also go global and take over the dominant financial technology provider in other markets as well.
And that's something that we've already seen with NPCI, where they are taking UPI to they're exporting it to different markets. But Harsh, we spoke about the decade that was, the last 10 years, all the different triggers and innovations. What do you think is going to be the biggest tipping point for the coming decade? And the second part of the question, the government has done a lot in terms of encouraging entrepreneurship. But now and then we see a lot of confusion when it comes to policy, when it comes to regulation. We have seen this across sectors, whether it's sports tech, gaming, fintech. I think, fintech entrepreneurs are always very ki aaj kaun sa circular aayega RBI se. But what needs to be done on both these fronts according to you?
So I think some of the tailwinds that we're seeing is obviously in the last few years we've seen the geo effect, right?
Yeah.
Just literally, the government policies have helped enormously with Startup India, Digital India. But there's also been this geo effect of getting almost 850 million people, getting fast speed internet. Gone are the days where you get excited about 1 Mbps. Now I get 30, 40 Mbps on my phone in my moving car, right? It's unimaginable from like 5 years ago. I think to answer your question, there's a couple of new technologies and platforms that can really push us forward. The standard point is obviously AI. There's no discussion without Gen AI.
Without mentioning
right.
AI.
But I think 5G and, we're talking about satellite internet now. I think internet is also going to evolve to a point where we get connected appliances, Internet of Things actually become a reality. You start seeing people having internet in the middle of nowhere. Today you still have to be near a cell phone tower, right, to get internet. I think that's going to keep moving away. The semiconductor push that the government is doing is phenomenal to make India self-reliant on something that's such a critical component of our future. But I think to answer the second part of your question, right, the way India has moved forward has been phenomenal to see. I think that we are now getting more and more self-reliant on our own. In fact, going back to Viren's point, Dream 11 has 75% of our users coming from outside the top 100, 115 cities in India, outside tier 1, tier 2. So what we are seeing is this real Bharat. When they say Bharat, all our kids play football, for example, right? So we think football is growing in India, which it is. But India is still very much a cricket market. The same way when we talk about India and all our likes and dislikes, we underestimate the power of Bharat and internet happening at a local scale. We're also seeing this entire, from all the regulations that have come in, to answer your question. Yes, of course, regulations have come in, and many times regulations hit us in the short run. We've been having that as well. But I think that every disruption in every industry, in every continent, in every geography, this is not an India story. In every country, disruptors will come and disrupt industries. As they grow, they are allowed to continue growing. When they reach a certain scale, now whether that be e-commerce, whether that be ride sharing, whether that be even Airbnb in the US, I think just like for us, gaming has reached a place where there's 40 crore users gaming in India, where there's 400 companies and 100,000 jobs, 1 lakh jobs that are highly skilled. The government has stepped in to switch from a disruptor to a fully regulated entity. And we fully welcome that. Most of the time, regulation will have some short-term pain as the industry grapples with the government on creating a way that doesn't stop growth, but also allows the bad operators to be, wiped out and all the good operators to continue. And there will be some growing pains in that.
Fair point. Regulation usually follows innovation in most major markets.
And that's okay.
But the Dream 11 stat is amazing, that so many users coming from smaller cities. And I remember you mentioning that a lot of women are also taking to gaming.
We've seen actually 80% growth in women playing year over year. We are seeing our, on a lighter note, for any RCB.
Harsh, the low base effect hai na? The number of women are so small, the 80%
no, I agree.
growth hoga.
I fully agree because sports fans in India are so dominantly male. We need many more women
No, I'm
sports
sure
fans.
the RCB win will
I was
make
just
more
going to
women
say,
take to give.
I was just going to say, on a lighter note, you have the RCB women showing the way, right? Of how this can
and
happen.
who knows if the boys win this year?
No, but
No,
Bangalore,
that Mumbai Indians, yeah, come
but
on.
Bangalore finally won a cup.
Ritesh, we've spoken about the good things, the tailwinds, but let's also talk about, governance issues that have rocked startups in the last year, from Byju's, then the regulatory concerns around Paytm. All this does make foreign investors nervous about what are we getting into in India. Is this a fair market? Is there rule of law? Is there stability? What should startups be doing more to, assure foreign investors, domestic stakeholders?
देखिए, I want to just conclude on Harsh's point before I respond to this. मुझे लगता है कि in startup language, 0 to 1 of Indian startups was 2016 to 2018, when the rapid ascent of startups happened. 1 to 10 was 2018 through to 2022. We went through various highs and lows, but we went through rapid growth as well. I think what got us here will not get us to the next from 10 to 100. So Uspe, this morning I was, of course, like many other entrepreneurs, very intently listening to Honorable Prime Minister's speech at Startup Mahakumbh. And he mentioned Bharat AI में दुनिया का नेतृत्व करेगा.
Yeah.
So मुझे लगता है कि the AI, and I'm trying to make an acronym because we're talking about sports. I think in AI it is Advantage India, for sure, because we have engineers, we have the product managers, we have implementation. So infrastructure ability we have good is proven by the Jam Trinity, and Harsh was mentioning that earlier. I think implementation is now the big opportunity, that how many developers from India are writing code and creating the best implementation of AI, and I feel that India offers a huge market domestically. Whether you pick it, like in our industry, right? You pick spiritual tourism, you have probably the world's biggest spiritual tourism market here. You want holiday destinations, you have the biggest holiday destinations here. You want urban cities, that's also here. That will allow us to do India for the world opportunities, which I think will create Indian leaders for the globe in times to come. To your point on governance, look, I think it's a part of growing up, coming back to the 10 to 100 story. Today, most of our companies have majority, if not all, independent directors. We are driving our business with decisions being made by people who are serious and have driven multinational companies historically. My view is that more startups are willing to be accountable, not just to regulators, but also to their own stakeholders. I think their ability to make a positive impact will only get better. So my view is that it's a growing pain, but you will see companies, Indian startups, be probably in next 5-10 years, learning from the pains as among the best governed, is my hope in times to come.
Right. Interesting point on AI. Hopefully the AI mission will also mean we get those GPUs which are in demand globally. We're out of time, and I want to get just closing thoughts from Viru and Upasana. Do we also need to do more to ring fence Indian startups like what China has done? This particularly came up during, the Google billing row. Just closing thoughts from both of you.
I think our firm belief is that we should have a fair and playing field. It should be fair both to the local companies as well as to the international companies. Second thing is, when you frame a fair law, you need to be aware and have a context of the ecosystem of India particularly. Why do you need startups? You need startups to drive innovation, and you need startups and you need competition to give best service to consumers. The Indian context is very, very important, and I think we should not be ashamed of framing rules which are around Indian context, Indian context, because we have huge diversity of population, which have different level of incomes, and we need to serve multitude needs of culture and needs of people.
I'm going to let you have the last word, Upasana.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. It's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Of course, it's going to attract dollars, both from investors as well as big tech and large global players, right? We have Amazon here, we have Google here, we have Meta here, we have everybody from tech over here. And of course, they'll be interested. So I think my thoughts are that we don't have a Google of India, right? We don't have a WhatsApp of India. WhatsApp has come from San Francisco to us here, and we are a large market for them. So I think it will be the case that we will use global products And so to the extent that we want to have Indian product companies also serving not just India but the global markets, we have to give them a chance to compete. So to that extent, I do believe, and Harsh and I are both on the IMAI Governing Council, I think we do believe that Indian orgs coming together and working with the government and regulatory bodies to say that should we have the right antitrust or anti-competitive laws in place which are fair, which enable global players also to make a play, but they also allow Indian companies to thrive. Because before we have reached that 100x scale, if you have a 100-pound gorilla and trying to clean out the market, that's not going to really serve the purpose of Indian startups. So therefore, it's a heavy question, and it's a very tightrope of balance that one needs to frame. And I want to just say 10 seconds more to the question that you were asking. I do believe that we are now in that middle phase of the Indian startup revolution, right? The last 10 years were sort of the build out. We are in that middle phase where companies are going from being a toddler, teenager to reaching just that adulthood. So I think you will see some disruptions, but I think those disruptions will mean that startup founders, as they are coming now into the ecosystem and building, will not be going for growth at all costs. Right. They will have to realize that innovation is important, growth is important, but maybe for long-term sustainability, you have to slow down a little bit and also think about building within the guardrails, thinking about governance, etc. And I think that's going to be great for the Indian ecosystem, because that's where valuable businesses are going to get created.
Right. On that note, thank you all very much for talking to us on this session. These are some of India's biggest entrepreneurs. A huge round of applause for all of them. Thank you very much, Harsh, Ritesh, Biru, and Upasana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chandra. Thank you once again to all of our guests. There was a fascinating discussion on India's startup ecosystem. Comes at such an important time when the Prime Minister also has just inaugurated the Startup Mahakumbh at the Bharat Mandapam, where he in fact had said that India's startup ecosystem is not really limited to metro cities, but it's also become a social culture. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for lunch. It's time for you to take a break. I can see all of you